my insurance is up 20% this year, or it's up 50%, or it's up 100, 200, 300%. What is going on here?
Drinking and driving claims are increasing, and it seems that a lot more lawsuits are coming through. And insurance is based on what we call like the law of large numbers. So I get a lot of phone calls where it's like, well, I have clean loss history and I've been in business 20 years and I don't understand why my rates are going up. The way it does work is one bad egg does ruin the batch. And so these carriers have loss ratios. As that ratio goes up, they're paying out, and the carrier is there to defend the bar owner, but obviously they don't want to pay out. They want to take on risks that are less risky, and we're in a high risk industry. And so what happens is they may pull out of that state, creating less competition. And when there's less competition, very often rates will go up and there's nobody there to compete and push them to fight for that business.
Hello and welcome to the Bar Business Podcast, where we help bar owners increase profits, attract loyal guests, and simplify operations so you can avoid burnout and finally enjoy your life outside of your bar. I'm your host, Chris Schneider, the Bar Business Coach. Before we get started, a quick thank you to our sponsors, Spot On, who provide a great modern POS solution for the bar and restaurant industry, and Starfish, who use AI to turn your books into actionable steps to increase profits.
One of the things I've seen a lot of over the past year or so is conversations regarding insurance. And this is a topic that I've seen everywhere, whether it's Reddit, different forums, materials that are coming out for industry magazines, industry newsletters, and within the Bar Business Nation Facebook group. We're seeing this happen a lot of conversations around insurance. And so I had a guy reach out to me, Lars, who I will introduce in a second, who is entirely focused on insurance for the hospitality industry. And I thought, what a better way than to answer some of these questions by bringing on somebody that actually knows insurance. And so rather than just a bunch of bar owners sitting in a room taking guesses about things we don't understand, we can ask the guy that actually knows. So with that said, today joining us is Lars Kristiansen. He is the Vice President of Business Development for KEL Insurance, and they entirely focus on bars, nightclubs, and restaurants. And they do that all over the country. They're licensed in 35 states. So he has a wealth of knowledge, not just about insurance, but about insurance and our industry all over the country. So Lars, thank you for being here. And hopefully that did your background a little bit of justice, but is there anything you'd like to add?
No, thanks for having me. Not much. Yeah, we're 100% hospitality. Well, hopefully I can give you some good knowledge and you can walk away learning something today.
Well, and I think for a lot of people listening to this, just so that you know, because Lars and I were talking right before we started recording, we know this is not an episode that necessarily is going to have answers everyone wants to hear, but I think it's really important because a lot of this information, there's a lot of rumor out there about insurance and there's a lot of crazy stuff going on. And so getting this understanding, I think, is really important for folks. So Lars, just to start us off, because bar insurance, you would think everybody that's in the bar business knows exactly what we're talking about. But what insurance does a bar actually need? What are the actual plans that we're talking about today?
Yeah, so we call the main package policy is going to be general liability. General liability, an example would be like slip and fall on the premises of your bar or somebody twists an ankle. Liquor liability, that's if you're in a dram shop state, that's for over serving a patron. An example, somebody gets overserved, gets in a car, hurts somebody, they can go back and sue the bar. That we sublimit a lot, and we do see a lot of claims come through the door, is assault and battery. So that's your bar fights, or if you have a bouncer that's an employee and hurts somebody, that falls under assault and battery. And then typically we'll do property coverage as well. When I say contents, I always say to bar owners, if you flip the building over and you shook it, everything that fell out of it, those are your contents, and then any like tenant improvements. So that's your main package. There are other coverages that some bar owners take, cyber liability, but yeah, those four are probably the main ones that you need.
And so I think, and tell me if I'm wrong here, the general liability is still pretty much the way it's always been. It's that liquor liability piece that has seen a lot of that movement with premiums in the last few years.
Yep. The liquor liability rates are what's driving the cost and creating all the headaches across the country. And that's, I always use drunk driving incidents because that's where we see it the most. But yeah, they continue to increase, and that's why the rates are continuing to soar, unfortunately.
And one other thing too, because it's interesting to me, because we've talked before, and for whatever reason, you might have said this, and I didn't pick up on it before, but you said that you're seeing assault and battery defense go up and claims go up. Now, is that because people are fighting more or they're suing more?
I would say a mix of both. I- it's more common nowadays, with just kind of the world we live in, for people to have a little bit shorter a temper and kind of just get into altercations, and everybody knows the phrase drunk muscles. And but then it also is paired with people suing more, and there being a volume attorneys out there who probably are in their ear saying like, hey, maybe you can get some money out of this. So I think we're just kind of at an age where there's less personal responsibility and more who can I blame, and so it's definitely a mixed bag.
For sure. And tell me if I'm wrong, but that's also part of what's driving up the liquor liability insurance is just more suits and more litigation that's going on
Yeah,
when things happen.
it seems that way, and again, I don't have like exact data on it, but from what I understand is, even since COVID, a lot of these claims are coming about, but a lot of these like injury law firms are, serving more and more people as over the past few years. So it seems like a double-edged sword, from what I understand.
And that would make sense to me. And I mean, I probably should not say this publicly on a podcast, but lawyers kind of ruin everything. And so maybe your insurance is going up just because of the attorneys, but I didn't say that. Talking about insurers real quick, because there's an interesting thing here. I know there are hospitality specific insurers and there are larger companies that also write hospitality. And when people are looking at getting insurance, what is the difference there? And what does that mean to them as the person being insured?
Yeah, so there are hospitality specific programs, and they are only in selective states. So unfortunately, you could be in a state that they don't have access or write that program rights, but typically what they have are third party administrators who are going to most likely defend the claims or put in, protocols into the quote so that when they something happens, they are able to go back and say this insurer did X, Y, and Z, and they can defend that claim. That's the main thing I think a bar owner should be concerned about. Now, typically those programs do have more competitive rates, but it's not a guarantee. And then we call them like a larger conglomerate carrier, and they're insurance companies that write insurance for contractors, they write property insurance, they write, across the board. So they have a diversified portfolio versus these programs who specifically are just doing the hospitality and manuscripting forms for that industry. So with them, they could defend claims. They do, but in my professional experience, it seems that they do have deeper pockets, and they do the math, and it makes sense for them to just pay out, and it ultimately will hurt the bar owner in the long run. I've seen it happen where maybe a claim should have settled for $200,000 and somebody with just deep pockets pays out 500 or $1 million. Now that bar owner has that sitting on their loss runs for 5 years, and it just makes their rate go up. It makes it extremely difficult for them in an already hard marketplace.
So it sounds like in general, the more hospitality specific you can get your insurance, the better off you are.
I can't say for sure, like every situation's different, but
Absolutely.
what I can say is there are programs in some states that do this every day and only are looking to do hospitality versus a larger company who's saying, hey, we want this percentage of our book to be hospitality. So that's the differentiation between the two, the
Sure.
main. So,
So that kind of gives us our overview of the landscape of what's going on here. And we've hit on some of the reasons why things are getting a little ridiculous on the price increases. Uh, to go back to where we started, right? The thing that has been interesting to me about insurance is just watching all these forums and watching everybody go year after year now post COVID and say, oh my God, my insurance is up 20% this year. It's up 50%, or it's up 100, 200, 300%. Sometimes you hear stories like that. So what is going on here? Like what is the main driver here that's pushing these rates up?
Yeah, so it's a mix of a few things. So I mentioned earlier, a lot of these drinking and driving claims are increasing, and it does, as you mentioned, seems that a lot more lawsuits are coming through. And insurance is based on what we call like the law of large numbers. So I get a lot of phone calls where it's like, well, I have clean loss history and I've been in business 20 years and I don't understand why my rates are going up. That's fine, but it's this, it's the way it does work is it's like one bad egg does ruin the batch. And so these carriers have loss ratios, and as that ratio goes up, they're paying out, and the carrier is there to defend the bar owner, but obviously they don't want to pay out. They want to take on risks that are less risky, and we're in a high risk industry. And so what happens is they may pull out of that state, creating less competition. And when there's less competition, very often, rates will go up, and there's nobody there to compete and push them to fight for that business. And the main thing that's really getting hard with that is a lot of new businesses who don't have like a paper trail to go by. People want to like buy these bars. And something I try to reiterate to bar owners a lot is I think that right now it's just in a tough market that insurance carriers they're more willing to decline than take the business because they don't want to add that risk to their portfolio. So it really is difficult already, and it doesn't operate like car insurance. You can't just like go into an app and go to like a Progressive, a State Farm, and just boom, get like 5 quotes from everybody. It's just a different marketplace. So it seems right now that there's just less and less competition, especially in certain states, and for that reason, it's just that with the the incidents and the claims increasing is just making it really tough for everyone.
So talking about that, because in insurance, I mean, we have to remember when we're looking at the United States, right? Insurance is really a state by state game.
Mhm.
It is what's true in one state is not always true in the other. So, what are you seeing as far as the different states that you're dealing with? Are some right now significantly better and easier, or some significantly worse? And do you have any understanding of why that would be outside of just who wants to play in which states?
I don't have that exact information, but it will come. I imagine it does come down to the claim payouts and
Hmm.
where carriers are getting hit the hardest. And there's also, and again, I'm not a lawyer, but there's also different laws. So, like for example, and I'd have to check to see how updates how recently it's been updated, but South Carolina has been really tough for liquor liability because the dram shop laws are requiring a full $1 million of liquor liability coverage. There are now carriers who've paid out tremendously in that state since COVID, and they're saying, "Hey, we don't want to insure up to that limit. We'll do a reduced limit." And so it's really pinning a lot of bar owners between a rock and a hard place. There are some states that are doing okay, and like I mean across the board I would say rates are up everywhere, but there are definitely states that are getting crushed, and I'm sure you can tell bar owners are feeling it.
Well, and the thing is, I mean, as much as we can try to have a positive conversation, there's not really what we're really talking about. This is not positive news for anybody, right?
Right.
Because it's kind of like, yeah, it's going up, and yeah, that's the way it is. I mean, how do you exist in a state like you're talking South Carolina? So you need $1 million worth of insurance to legally operate, but no one wants to give out $1 million worth of insurance. So I assume that means to get that million, now you have to pay through the nose for it,
Yep.
if you can even get it.
Right.
And then I'm assuming the politicians probably haven't started to worry about bars closing due to not being able to pay insurance.
Right.
I'm sure that's way down on their radars. But is there anything that as an operator you can do? Because I feel like so much of this stuff we're saying, okay, this is totally out of your control. And is there anything? Or is this just one of those things where you have to understand it, you have to learn it, and you have to realize, okay, sometimes depending on the state, depending on what insurance I need, depending upon what my landlord wants or whatever I'm trying to get for whatever reason, I'm going to kind of get bent over a barrel. And that's just the cost of doing business.
Yeah. Well, I can make 2 points. One that I can definitely speak more to because it's the knowledge that I have. And then I'll make a second point, which I'm always happy to go out and try to find more information to to bring to you guys. So step one is kind of more in like the near term thing, right? It's like, what can I do right now as a bar owner to help? So there are, even though rates are increasing and like collectively there's not much you can do on that end as a bar owner, one thing is when we are submitting to these programs, there are questions that will give you like points towards your rating. For example, with nightclubs, right? If you're running like a third party security, they want to know, do you have video surveillance? Is that surveillance being held for 60 days or more, right? If that third party security firm, do they carry their own insurance? So there's transfer of risk. Do you have a contract between that security firm? Because then what happens, right? If you get a really bad assault and battery claim and you go to court, you have everything documented that they can go and defend you guys, from and say, like, here's the contract, here's who the liability is on, here's the video evidence of what's going on. So like that in the underwriting process will, now, it's not going to knock your rate completely down, unfortunately, but the underwriters are taking that into account, stuff like that. Like, or for like a simpler example, fire, if your building has a sprinkler system, I mean, it's just lessening the risk of it burning to the ground. So, in that sense, I think it's really important, and I'll segue into, it's really important to go through all these things with your agent and not just trying to sell myself here, but I do think that what's important is if you really do feel you're unsure about your insurance or the agent that you're currently with, my suggestion would be to do some homework. Go online, go to find podcasts like yours, find Reddit feeds, find Facebook groups, talk to your neighbors, find out who they're using, and then make a few calls. Maybe don't try to get a quote from all of them, but maybe just talk to them and just kind of get a vibe check. Like, is this person here to serve me? And then give them a shot and give them the information, because I can't speak for others, but I've been in the industry long enough to know that people kind of find us and we can kind of help that. If we can help them, they stay because they feel that they understand that, like, hey, we're here to help. We're trying to help you the best we can. Like, we're the messenger, right? We're the broker. We're between. We have to keep the carrier happy. We have to keep you happy. But I think people like knowing that, at least, like, hey, if this is the information, at least I know that you're doing the due diligence to do the best you can for us. Uh, the second point that I would speak to, and I would need to get more information on this, but if you look at Washington, D.C., I believe recently some of their tort law had just changed. And DC was a really tough area to get insurance in recently. And I think collectively, I don't know if it was all bar owners or whoever was involved, some legislation did get passed that has now alleviated that area. So if that's something you want to Google, and I can find more information for you. But I think collectively, bar owners definitely should not be in competition with each other and maybe be more information sharing and be a team and see what routes they can take, as far as like legislation within their state.
I mean, I hate to say it, but I've never known bar owners to be particularly organized and
Right.
forming PACs and political action committees to go after issues.
Yeah.
But to your point, I mean, if it really is the difference in some of these states between being able to operate and make a profit and not being able to operate and make a profit, and
Yeah.
everybody's aligned on that, that's not a bad idea, right? Because any state where the laws are what's causing your expenses to go up, you might want to look at changing the laws.
Yeah.
Now, something that we didn't hit on that I kind of want to circle back to is cash flow. Because right now, I talk to folks all the time, and between inflation and labor costs going up and everything else, cash is really tight right now. And if I look at the kind of the standard on what people were earning throughout the year, last year it seems like profits just dropped all year on average. So cash is tight. And insurance, one of the problems with the products you sell, a lot of these companies are like, yes, I'll insure you. It's $25,000 for the year. You owe me that today. So what are there carriers that become a little bit better with cash flow? Are there ways that bars can address this short of just saving throughout the year, knowing that they need the big check at the end of the year?
Yeah, so most hospitality policies are going to be 25% minimum earn, which means you're typically responsible for the first 3 months. Going back to the like part when I said this isn't like car insurance. Like one thing that bar owners do want to be careful about is they don't want to cancel policies, they don't want to switch policies midterm, and they don't want to lapse in coverage because carriers are always going to, especially now, like are going to want to see loss runs and see a paper trail. And again, we're kind of in this place where they want to be more selective, and they can say like, why is there gaps in your coverage, this and that, and then they will back away, right? So as far as like that on their side alleviating some of the costs, I don't think there's really anyone out there in this industry. It's not like car insurance, it's just like month to month. Those big down payments up front are definitely, especially within the last few years, have been a huge pain point for bar owners. Agencies like mine, I can't speak for other agencies. We typically work with finance companies who, work in tandem with the carrier. And you should talk to your agent and just say, hey, look, like I can afford the insurance. Like if you're not saving, I know we talked about before, you're like, I just always put money aside and just paid it all in full. Unfortunately, not every bar owner is in that situation. So definitely talk to your agent about, getting flexible with the financing. Can you lower, go into the finance company and making requests to lower those down payments, maybe extending the monthly installments out an extra month or two if possible. Those are ways that agents can possibly help bar owners. I can't speak for everyone, but on the carrier side, I don't think you're going to see it happen, unfortunately.
So basically, you just got to figure out how to come up with cash or finance it. And
Yeah. Well, and yeah, and definitely one thing to, especially to new owners, when we're rating, right, we get your sales, right? So we always say you want to be as accurate as possible. And what some people try to do is they try to lower their sales so that they're paying less, but then they're going to get crushed on the backside with an audit. And so now you're paying this big down payment, and then you've got to come up with this audit for the carrier. And it's just like a lot of money at once. So it really is best to just communicate with the agent. I know like there can be that like trust barrier between an insurance person and a client, but honesty really does help you. It's really in your best interest and just being accurate there. And yeah, I would just always plan like if you're really, I would personally, if I was a bar owner, I would do either quarterly or 6-month audits on myself and just say like if I'm like, all right, I'm kicking ass, like we're really making money, I would just start thinking like they are gonna come, they're gonna audit. And we always say insurance companies, they're very quick to take your money, very slow to give it back. So it's just the nature of the beast. Yeah.
well, it is. They're kind of like the government in that way, right?
Hopefully they don't see that part. It's all right.
I mean, here's the thing, because at the end of the day, I mean, because like I've said a few times throughout this, none of this is really like happy stuff to talk about,
Yeah.
but it's things people need to know. And unless you understand, hey, they're going to take your money and they're going to want it up front, and you better have that ready to go. And it makes it way easier if you just understand that, right? Because if
Yeah.
you don't have it, it's really hard to stroke a check for money you don't have.
Yeah. I agree. And I think, like we know we're a thorn in people's side. We're the expense that nobody wants to pay. We're the necessary evil, whatever you want to call it. But I think, bar owners are frustrated because they're just left in the dark, right? They don't understand insurance. They don't want it until they have to use it. And so, that's why I'm here with you. I just want to like, hey, here's the information. It's not what you want to hear, but at least now you know. And it's like you can take it and do what you will with it.
Absolutely. So we're getting close on time for the day. Is there anything else you would like to add to the conversation we're having?
There's definitely a lot. I think, again, going back to bar owners, I encourage bar owners to always, every few years, quote unquote, shop insurance. But what I think you really need to be careful with, you have to also step into the carrier shoes as well. You have to understand where they're coming from and what their limits are. And, maybe talk to a bunch of different agents, find the one that works well with you, you feel that's protecting your business. Because what you don't want to do is you don't want to shop out with like 5 different agents and then the carriers getting all these different submissions, and then there's a lot of like confusing information, they'll back away. We're just kind of at this marketplace right now where it seems like it's very difficult just for approval. And so anything you can do to like work with your agent to, whether it be like even just like looking at your online presence, your social media, have your agent go with it through that online presence with your agent over the phone and do like a self audit. Just kind of reevaluate everything, your operations, and ask them like, if I do this with my business, where does that classify me, insurance wise? And specifically what I'm talking about is like with security, like live entertainment, there's different classifications for the type of business you're running. So a lot of times I'll get like, well, I'm a restaurant. And I'm like, I know, but on your Instagram, you've got live bands every Saturday. And, I can't, like it can't just be like, hey, yeah, this is a fine dining restaurant. And it's like, no, you've got bands on Facebook. So I think, as bar owners, I think you should just do some homework, take the time to reach out and just get the conversation going and see where maybe there are these minor gaps or cleanups you can do to help yourself.
Cool. And I'm sure a lot of people, as you were saying that, were thinking, okay, if I need to talk to different agents and see how I get along, I want to go talk to Lars. So how can people get a hold of you and your company?
Sure. Yeah. Well, our website is kelinsurance.com. Everybody calls it Kel. Right there, there's a contact form or we have an online application. If you just want to call me directly, my cell phone should be on the website there, or you can just do our main contact form, put your name in, and I'll call you as soon as I, get it. And then, yeah, I tell everyone, just, even if I can't help you, if you want to pick up the phone and just chat and I can evaluate your situation, I'm going to be very honest with you. I'm not going to make you promises. I can just look at your situation and just say, hey, look, like you're good where you are, or maybe we can help. And that's it.
Well, perfect. And just to make it easy for everybody, we'll put all the links to the website and everything in the show notes. So you can just scroll down as you're listening right now and click that. But with that, Lars, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for demystifying insurance a little bit and hopefully giving people some information they didn't have before that they really need.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
That about wraps it up for today. If you enjoyed today's insights, make sure you like, subscribe, and leave a review. If you are ready to take your bar to the next level, schedule a strategy session with me by clicking the link in the show notes below. Until next time, have a great day, and we will talk again later.